Video games. Why do we play video games? Clearly, there must be some reason as to why we continue to play video games. Simply put, it is fun. But why is it fun? Why does it appeal to millions upon millions of people? We, as people, play video games to find some source of entertainment. In this video, I'll be talking about the history of gaming development and the issues of gaming games and the positives. Some people are really competitive in nature and get an adrenaline rush when playing video games and when winning in a game. I like to say this is when people are in the heat of the moment, and by winning in a game, it gives people self-confidence and satisfaction. Some neurologists think that playing video games give people amphetamine. Amphetamine is a hormone which releases from the brain, making people happy. This hormone can lead people to try to experience something more than once, as it makes them feel happy, which can become addictive, and an example of this would be playing video games. Some of us also like to play video games for the amount of creativity a game has, and it brings out the creative part of us out. Creativity is known to make people feel positive and even increase the amount of creativity they have in real life. Some of us like to explore what a game has to offer, feeling as if they are in a totally different world. Games such as these would contain genres such as fantasy and adventure.
So do I believe that video games make people violent? To an extent, yes. I think that some individuals are genetically predisposed to being aggressive, and that if an environmental stimuli such as a violent movie or a violent video game presents itself and they play it for an extended period of time, then yes, this can trigger some of those innate tendencies within individuals. So yeah, on one hand, some people are naturally more aggressive, but on the other hand, it's also something that's determined by your environment.
In some cases, yes, because they have like a distinctive influence on the user or the person who's playing the game. For example, if it's a violent game, they may develop some violent you know what I'm saying? Like, for example, if a young boy is playing a violent video games, they may develop a violent interest and may try to attempt to recreate that video game onto other people. For example, they might end up hitting their siblings because of that influence. But in other cases, no, because people know the difference between reality and visual aid. For example, video games.
Do you believe that games make you violent?
I think the issue in terms of modern gaming and violent games is the fact that it looks very realistic. So back in the day it was a bit too animated and a bit cartoony, I should say. So in terms of associating the events in the video games in real life, you would say that it was quite limited. But now that we have video games that actually depict real life, I think the effects on people are actually quite massive and a lot bigger now. So to answer your question, I would say yes. I think people that do play video games might get slightly desensitized to things that naturally you should have a reaction to. So for example, seeing blood and violence means that you kind of think that they're quite normal, so therefore you're more likely to take part in violent behaviours, as well as the fact that sometimes it just changes the way you think. So for example, you might look at events, because we learn from the media and video game is some form of media. You might look at events that happen in those video games, and then when you are in a similar situation in real life, you might react or act exactly the same way that you've seen in the video games, especially if you're of a younger age where you're a lot more impressionable and a lot more influenced by the media. That might affect your everyday behaviour. So I do think it makes you a lot more violent than you would be if you didn't play violent video games.
Video games have been around for at least 58 years, but you can always play video games at home. Whenever you wanted to play video games before, you could only play them at arcades and public areas, so you didn't have the free time like you always wanted to. The first ever game to be made was called Ping Pong, and the first ever console to be made was called the Atari, which felt like you're playing a 2D version of resembling tennis. People were mind blown, since it was the first ever game to interact with on screen. This was in 1958. Before, you could only play in the exact same room with two controllers playing on the exact same console, but since online was made for gaming, it has become much more popular in general, as people could interact globally and can talk to friends and anyone else online. Games have been accused of making people violent. News reports have blamed games for people murdering and acting hostile to others. What I say to this is not the game that's at fault here, but the person, as at the end of the day it's the person's own will and no one else's. And I would say this would be the same thing, anything related to the media industry. Games for the most part were neutral and for everyone to play until video games like Doom came out, which contained violence which was not suitable for younger people under the ages of 18. Since then, games like Mortal Kombat, GTA and Hitman have been made and have made a great impact on the gaming industry for the amount of violence they contain. To me personally, this only made games have more variety to them, just like a genre. It gives people a more appealing approach to gaming and why it's so popular as it is now. Overall, game has become an increasingly influential, popular part of the media industry, more than movies industry, I believe, which isn't so different, as games provide more content and also said to be more entertaining for people, ranging from the ages of 7 to 30. All games have great potential and keep getting better over time. Games appeal to almost everyone and have the same genre as movies, which makes it just as appealing as movies. Depending on the amount of creativity a creator has, a game can be limitless and it can go beyond anyone's expectation. It all depends on the amount of creativity someone has. Video games can also have a big impact on people and leave a message behind, which can be a life lesson to some people, just as movies that leave a message behind. I can understand where people come from when they say video games are bad for you and can make people violent, but like everything else, it has its negatives and its positives. Thank you for listening.